Hello and welcome to the Mysticast, where you join me, Jack Stafford, a student of Metaphysics and member of the Aetherius Society, the cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, as we break down the barriers between religion, science, metaphysics, philosophy, and mysticism, all of which are really only aspects of the self-same quest for truth. Please note, this is an independent program not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, our guest is Elijah Parker. Hello, Elijah.
Hello, such a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I'm really interested. I've heard about human design from various sources, kind of this trickle effect, as many people have. But for people that don't know about it, could you just kick us off with a little explanation of it?
Absolutely. Human design is an amazing body of wisdom, and I more came from the Gene Keys specifically, which kind of spurred from Richard Rudd, who studied for many years inside human design, and this merger, the synthesis of different systems, and not just the smashing together of astrology or the Kabbalah or these different things, but an emerging synthesis, an exploration of how fractal lines of wisdom are interwoven and interconnected, and witnessing perhaps a new transmission, a new evolution of some of this astrological wisdom and deep introspective, contemplative tools and technologies. And so Richard Rudd, who is the founder of the Gene Keys, the first student of the Gene Keys, as he calls it, he had his own light body transmission, and then kind of merged with human design for many years as a teacher and longtime both student and teacher. And from there, he merged his own philosophy, his own study of the world's philosophies, and as a poet, brought forth the Gene Keys, which is an exploration of 64 symbols, archetypes that move from shadows to gifts to their highest divine essences, and laid out a map that I've been lovingly studying and working alongside with Richard and creating content and just being an adventurer on the path for the past 13 years.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so I apologize. I've been reading all about human design, but this interview is about gene keys. So let me correct myself there before. So what got you into gene keys? Because you spend a lot of time on it. You've devoted your time and energy. It must be worth it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. What was your particular landing on
I
this?
love thanks for asking. It's funny that I've been on it for so long, because my first introduction to it was I was traveling through the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. on something called the High Frequency Tour, and we were just meeting amazing people to share their genius with the world, and that inspires me so deeply, is seeing the unique genius coming alive in people. And through that journey, I met some amazing people in Portland, Oregon, and there was this book on the table with a dragonfly and the I Ching, and just it just kind of shimmered off the table. And upon meeting with these people who had been just reading and exploring it on their own, I immediately said, "Nope, no, 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 not another system, not another astrology, not another
Mm.
mental tool." And instead, over time, it courted me as wisdom and mystery does, and it courted me to see it wasn't just another kind of story that the mind but was here to try to find safety in the universe, but rather was a poetic tome of courting the mystery and courting our shadows and our challenges. And so it took a little bit, I would say, right at the beginning, but luckily there were people who were inspired by it. And then I started witnessing it alive in my life when I'd read my keys and seeing them come to life, and just even the book in general, which set me off on this long love affair with this beautiful transmission.
So it's personality types. It's like astrology. I've heard the Myers Briggs or the Enneagram. It's a personality type system. Is that a good way to describe it, or is it more than that?
That's what I like, is that there's layers, right? There's the personality layer that we come in, and that might be driven by our conditioning and our how we grew up and where we grew up. And then there are these design components, these deeper hidden codes. What if the purpose of our life wasn't the theater of what we do out in the world, but was this deeper relaxation in the form of our body and encoded in our body? So it looks at the 64 of the I Ching, these incredible uh, archetypal map of many different codes of consciousness. And then with astrology can pinpoint specific codes to you. But instead of defining who you are, which sometimes these systems can stick you in a box. You're supposed to be this way, and here are your detriments and your gifts. But actually, for me, the Gene Keys, as well as human design, but specifically the Gene Keys, provides a map, a hero's journey for you to discover what's my innate hidden intelligence, and how do these archetypes serve as reminders on my pathway of discovery. So even if we have the same chart, we live completely different lives. That's kind of the joke of astrology. It's like, how can we actually map the infinite complexities of who we are? But inside those archetypal steps, I've noticed keys that unlock something unique to me and yet also connected to a universal truth. And that's why I kind of love the balance of both personality and inner, hidden gifts as well.
I've listened to because I heard about it a while ago, and my friend sent me the audio, Richard's audio for it's about half an hour for each gene key, and and you listen to it, and I think one of my challenge was to be, just to be, and which you hear from, which we've heard echoed through time, haven't we? It could be a Buddhist or a Zen philosophy. Maybe we're all so stupid that we have to hear the truth told in 101 different, a million and one different ways to
Or
understand
maybe
it.
we get to. What a beautiful art to get to hear be in a million myriad different ways. So
Yeah, yeah, simplicity. So it's strange, isn't it, that just the time you were born, all you need is the time and the location. It defines your personality. I mean, how do you think that works with reincarnation? Because we've all had millions of lives before. And we've all been. Do you think and our higher self, as I understand it, chooses the time and place of our rebirth, and I choose our parents and that, and to be born at that specific time, to have specific skill sets, to be brought to face a specific challenge? That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
yeah, I don't know personally if it's a linear conscious choice, but I do believe in the geometry of life. And so if you look at, for me, astrology is less about planetary bodies influencing me as much as the fractal map pinpointing this moment in time. And like a fractal, the moment of a fractal, it has so much information encoded in a single moment. So that the beginning of things, when we start a project, when our child is born, when we make a new breakthrough in our life, there's a moment, there's a fractal that has a lot of information about the relationship to come for many, many years. So why not have this moment, this imprint, this natal imprint of the moment we came into this world? It tells a part of Indra's net, right? It reveals a part of the hologram. And from that is less about defining who we are, but maybe, like you said, maybe a part of our consciousness in that reincarnation process is finding the perfect geometry to bring a shard of that collective, maybe it's collective trauma or a challenge or a wound that we're actually here to unwind, to reveal. And it finds its perfect golden thread to come into the next body and pick up where it left off or pick up a whole new part of the chapter. And so
Mm.
I think that's what the beauty of astrology and reincarnation and the gene keys, we call it fractal lines. It is we're following a particular fractal line. We meet people that feel like they're on our fractal family because there's resonance to the mission, the driven that we found ourselves here with.
Yeah, because we know so little about life on the other realms. Um, did the what's that film, the Brazilian film, um, which shows life on the astral realms. It's
Mm.
quite an accurate. Have you remember what that film was
I
called?
don't, though I'm gonna look it up after this. That sounds
Yeah, it'll
amazing.
come. Yeah, it'll come to me in a minute. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a science, I think, on the other realms to determine the time of a rebirth, as you say, to start the spin again. So yeah, it must be. I think the great masters wait a long time to find the perfect point and perfect time to get a skill set or the energy to perform a specific mission and specific task. Yeah. And so, how can the gene keys help? So it's the I Ching. It's also used
Hmm.
in human design, and it takes the numbers of the I Ching and kind of it's old information, but we've been given a little bit more with Richard's channeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the aspect of the original I Ching has the a 64-bit code to it, which we see mirrored in DNA and in physics and in many different traditions. And it's not quite just a reinterpretation. That's one. I mean, the I Ching does have thousands of commentaries, which each bring their own, an inner wisdom meets the ancient, foundational truth, and that's where all of our wisdom comes from, right? We sip from the well of wisdom and see how this unique incarnation is bringing the next chapter alive. But the Gene Keys takes it a bit deeper into its exploration of, like what you're describing, that soul's reincarnation. There's a pathway of how these different keys in your profile, they awaken in sequences. And we can also go backwards in time to go deep into our own conception line and actually see these archetypes when we were, ages 14 to 21 and 7 to 14 and 0 to 7, all the way back until when we were in our mother's womb, and feel these incarnation cycles. Even in this life, we've been incarnating, multiple times in this body. And so as you travel inward with these stories, these archetypes, they form as keys, as doorways to see, oh, this is where that trigger lived when I was a boy, when I was just challenged in school. But even deeper than that, oh, it's connected into a lineage of both challenge and shadow and potential gifts. And I think that's really what the juice of the gene key comes from, is it gives us these 64 archetypes not as cages or prisons, but as a recognition that the gift is always hidden in the shadow. That the shadow isn't something to get rid of, but is information that is condensed, usually with fear and survival and different patterns that we constrict the body. But within that is the potential for a awakened, creative, flowing response that uses that shadow as fuel. And so it gives us a pathway of transformation in that way.
So you talked about timing. You said we go through these because we talked about the original time that you're born, and then we go through these phases in our lives, these multiple incarnations. I've no, so how does astrology come into this? Because I've noticed that with human design, you can, there are, well, this conjunction is happening, these things are happening. Does it go that detailed in human design as well?
Absolutely. In Jinkies, you'll see you can always run your transits like in astrology and human design to see like what's happening now or these different cycles in life. Jinkies as a base tries to be less complicated in a way because there's always an infinite rabbit holes we can go down. And in my own journey, I enjoy studying all these different modalities. So I've seen the wisdom of that. But can the simplicity of a single map be enough? And actually go very deep into the contemplative practice of just your natal chart, as like an astrologer would call it. Your gene keys profile is actually has the encodings for all of those other iterations. But you can, of course, if you enjoy breaking things down, you can always look at, oh wow, this whole transit is happening in my life, and watching my Saturn cycles in relation to the gene keys, you can translate them in that way.
Okay, so could you give me some concrete examples of how as it's improved maybe your life, or I mean, people you've consulted with, or how can people apply it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is that often when you approach a wisdom is just being seen. This moment of you can look at some of these words and see the shadows of your profile alive in your life, as well as the gifts alive in your life. For me, it's created a mythical a mythical story for me to reference as I grow and change in this life. So I have one of my keys is the shadow of greed, to the gift of aspiration, to the city, the highest divine potential of ascension. And Yogananda was one of the people that also had, carried this key very strongly. It was an inspiration when I was young. And that ascension quality of my young spiritual seeker of, oh, I got to attain my light body. I have to break out of this prism of being a human and achieve enlightenment, is also greed. It's also the hunger
Oh,
for
really? Yeah.
power, the
Mm.
hunger to grow, and I could see how also in the world greed is the same hunger, but maybe it's not even for a spiritual direction. Oh, it's just I want more for my selfish needs. I want more because I'm afraid of death and dying without purpose. So I take and I eat. So I've learned inside that gene key, it's a dragon gene key for me. I've learned to respect my greedy dragon part of myself that wants to grow, wants to have more, but align it very carefully with that gift state of aspiration. So I don't want to just be greedy for even taking this time with you, right? Or taking the when I do a session and get paid. I don't want to just take for selfish desires that match my fear of extinction, but I want to fuel my aspirations for collective thrival. I want to be greedy for collective thrival. I want us to be hungry for that spiritual aspiration. And so it helped me learn, oh, these are the parts of me that seek recognition and want to be seen in a certain way or want resources in a certain way. And that's not something to get rid of. It's something to align with. And in
Okay.
turn, I don't have to escape into my ascension. I can live into this body.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so that's something common in human design as well, and Wijing is that I get this more from astrology is that you have this aspect to you, which is this part is imbalance, and this part is this is it manifesting in balance, and this is it manifesting out of balance. So, and sometimes that can be good to know because if you're really doing it badly, out of balance, but with a lot of energy, with a slight twist, you can go to the moon. No?
It's one of the things when I was perusing the website that you sent and just understanding more about the teachings that you have been working with. And one of the things that touched me so deeply was the clear power of prayer and energy and focusing that intention. And I think that the danger, like you're saying, is we're such powerful beings, and when we're in our constricted fear or reactive state, we can all that energy of this infinite being of who I am gets pushed into that constriction and can actually cause me to even more constrict or react against someone else. And so for me, the yoga is not just in body, mind, soul, but in relationship with life. And so the gene keys have brought me this threshold, this texture of what is it like to be in relationship with challenge, with constriction, with stress, with greed, with these 64 words of the shadow. How can I be in relationship with them? Because like you said, that slight tweak, there's all this potential energy that can actually grow from that and can be channeled into, healthy, fun, creative, loving containers.
Yeah, I mean, we all hear that story. We're all one. We're all God incarnated, but to hear it practically like that, I mean, sometimes I've heard that even the most involved black magicians in the lowest astral realms can, because they're very active people. I mean, when they turn towards the light, they can accelerate past a priest who's just you know not who's happy being. Maybe not. That's not being's not a good example, but who's working, not working. And if when you have that habit of working, if you just channel it in the right direction, you get this information because we're told that there's only one crime on this earth, and that's ignorance.
Mm.
So if we can just get a little bit of information, and we can change our whole lives.
That's a beautiful quote. One of my teachers says, it's not about bad and wrong and good and evil. It's about ignorant and wise, because ignorance always has the opportunity to become wise. And I love that of what you just said of if we can, and that's why I work with the gene keys and other contemplative tools is introspective, tools. Like you said, are we so dumb that we have to get repeated over and over again? Just be it's a part, I think, of the journey of at least my experience so far of the journey of being human is the many different ways that we can remember and that we tweak our neurological and spiritual capacities to remember at greater efficiency. So I don't have to stay as lost and locked in a biofeedback loop that causes more suffering. That for me is the unwinding of those wounds and why I enjoy contemplative teachings to help hack the brain to remember a little bit more.
And it's also helps with relationships. Like, have you untangled? Because many of our stresses in our life come from miscommunication or
That is the deepest part for me of the Gene Keys is relationship because it is self, relationship with self. It is relationship with challenge. And of course, it's relationship with other. And Richard, some of the sequences, the Venus sequence is the deepest part of the Gene Keys. And it is all about relationship and looking at our triggers and defense systems inside relationship. And the trigger isn't just something that triggers me, it's an ignition, it's a catalyst, it's an initiation. So energy is coming into my being. What if I've attracted relationships that have the perfect minerals for me to unwind my karma and live my dharma, to live my path? What if relationship was the fastest way for to attain your purpose? Because it's the things that trigger us the most. It's the things that touch and hurt our vulnerable places. So it's given me perspective of my own triggers and defense systems really intimately, and then it's given me compassion to not see my partners or my friends or my coworkers just in the shadow pieces that hurt, and are hurt, but also to lift them up into those gifts and learn how, oh, your shame wound is healed with universal love and acceptance. And so how can I encourage a playful commitment to this moment instead of feeding more shame into our relationship and to this dynamic? So it's given me real, I call it archetypal acupuncture. These like very specific needles of, oh, that's where the constriction is. Okay, finally I can relax a little bit deeper and see how the relationship unfolds now.
No, that's great because I'm a new father as well, and all the other parents say, "Where's the instruction manual?" And why didn't I get it? Why wasn't it born? And then with human design and gene keys, and built on astrology and the I Ching and the Kabbalah, it's digested now. We can understand it, and it helps our relationships. And I feel it's been a great gift for me and my son because I can watch him unfolding. Yeah.
What a gift. I don't yet have that gift in my life, but I honor it and I look forward to that happening in my life as well. And that's one of the reasons, honestly, that I've I've studied many different worlds, systems, gone through many, traveled the world, and one reason why the Gene Keys is still with me 13 years later, one of the big reasons was because Richard Rudd, the founder who brought in this particular transmission, is a father. And I watched this very incredible spiritual wizard that he is, be here with his children, with love, with family, with the body. And that was something that was missing in that younger spiritual seeking part of my years, is not to completely separate. And I have my monk side of myself, which is a completely valid and incredible pathway to God and to love and to the universe. But I think there was part of my unique choice in this lifetime was to, where can we bridge that into our human relationships as well? Because I think the Earth needs that relationship to bring some love to that. So
Yeah.
thanks for being a father in that way. And
And so you reached out to Richard and you said, "Can I be your communications manager?" Or they just
no,
evolved?
no, no, no. I was living in a art and music community, just living the Jinkies. So it was just a part of our main practice together. We make music, make art, and did Jinkies together for years. And he found us through the ethers. We would create videos and things, and we began collaborating at events. And years later, we're dear friends. And I just I love to serve this community. It's a global network of people, and I'd never really seen, it's a community of people. I'm sure you've experienced this in your community, of people all over the world, in this case, choosing to see the gifts inside the challenges. That's the kind of unifying principle, is people are looking at that holographic imprint of their relationship with challenge and their potential in their creative gifts. And so there's very different people with very different practices and cultures and backgrounds. And so to get to just collaborate with my wizard friend Richard and decode together, and then to get to serve a much wider net of synthesis, of not trying to merge all religions into one homogenous mess, but to honor the many different fractals and also to reflect on the pattern, the holographic pattern that we see from many different perspectives, which is why I loved hearing more about this like merger of science and Christianity and spirituality and all of these. I think that's the polymath in us that is feeling this synthesis as a critical juncture of our neurology, and as spiritual beings, we kind of need those neurons to connect for the vastness of the potential to awaken.
Yeah, that was the acid test for me. Is Well, I was explained to me that was the acid test. Is not something I realized myself, but you know, we're all searchers, aren't we? We've had different paths, but when I found my metaphysical teacher, he explained that you should discern, because if the bricks stand on top of each other, if it tallies with the yoga, the Vedic texts, and the I Ching, if it's the late, if the blocks stack, then it's in this ancestry, or whatever is not really the right word, but yeah. So what did about getting the channeling that Richard went through? How long was it, and what happened?
His original light body experience was over 3 days and 3 nights, and he was it was a vast experience for him where one of the ways that he describes it is that that is when the full fractal opened for him, and he had been studying different practices and techniques his whole life. So he had a background and a history. He's traveled his whole life with different teachers, Mantak Chia and Beli Chine Song work, and many different philosophies. He got I think, his degree in some sort of metaphysics degree, so his mind and his poetic soul had been tapped into, I think, a framework to understand it. Because a lot of people, when they have a Kundalini experience or a light body experience or an awakening, it can be very sudden and out of context. In fact, it's what I think we see a lot of how it is related to different breakdowns. And so his breakdown was very physical, as he describes it. And he emerged from that experience back as a human, back as Richard. And how do I integrate this vastness that I've seen? Which set him on the next stage of his journey, where eventually finding human design was a map that an astrological coordinate that helped ground the vastness of the correspondences that he had seen. And so he describes it as he sips from it now. The door was opened, and he can just sip from it and see the next sequence unlocking inside himself. And then thus writes it and shares that through his work.
So was he in a trance for 3 days?
He was, as he says, he woke up in light, and some of the things he's described is just literally having light pour out of every part of his body. And eventually he was walking around, and he was on Bardsey Island, which is a famous mystical space. Very, very, very few people would be there. And so he was walking around and said that he experienced all of his lifetimes kind of walking in as iterations with him. So I think it was that merger of full trance and then also altered experience that we kind of. But yeah, he's got a few videos out there that he describes a little bit more in detail. But and the Gene Keys book itself kind of is him unpicking these massive lifetimes of moments that kind of happened inside that, unpicking and unwinding and telling parts of that. Yeah.
Because it was the same with human design, wasn't it? Rahuru had another.
Yes.
It was just
He heard
downloading
the
information.
voice. That was the.
So is it because, well, I haven't studied too much. I'm mostly an expert, shall we say, on the Aetherius Society, or a beginning to study a lot about it. But it was Dr. King. He did 10 years of yogic practices, like advanced yoga, like heavy pranayama, like 8 hours a day for 10 years. So, purified his nadis. He raised Kundalini up through all the chakras. He was samadhi. And so he could go into samadhic trance, and he could gain rapport, because from what I understand it, it's, you can get people on your level, I can speak to you because we're, not to denigrate you, but we're on the same level in this moment. If I want to get someone on another realm, a higher realm, they have more energy. Maybe that's a crude way to put it, but they're higher frequency. To get rapport with them, you have to reach up. They can come down so far. So do you think with Richard, there was also through one individual who gave him this knowledge, or was it a Kundalini rise, or?
Yeah, he doesn't express it as singular in that way. In his experience, I think that one of the things that I love about Richard is this absolute love affair with literal texture of light itself and the vastness of intelligence that is inside light. And so that when he describes it, like even kind of the beautiful parallel of Ra heard a voice, right?
Yeah.
Versus this is an experience of light. And so he doesn't really think of it in a singular consciousness moment like that. But he does have experience connecting with many of the different, teachers and ascended teachers, as well as physical teachers, that have clearly tasted the same fractal that he is on, as he would put it. So there's a particular master in a Bulgarian, Bense Duno, and that's a real deep part of. He knows there's a connection there of a lineage of light that he has worked with, as well.
That's so much above our pay grade, isn't it? I mean, they have colors that we can't even have names for. I mean, it's just we see such a small part of the spectrum, and to know that to imagine what life is like on the higher realms, or in because we believe that that each chakra is a realm of consciousness.
Mm.
So when you die, you go to another realm, higher or lower, depending on your form card. And so yeah, this is probably on the higher realms. This is the kind of thing you're going to be really at home up there when you go back. Probably you can really indulge these studies, these sciences, which are way above. Yeah, metaphysics is far ahead of physics.
There's a beautiful thing that you said of these higher beings can only come down so far, and that's something that I appreciate about the Gene Keys is this theory of involution as much as evolution, right? Of grace is beckoning, begging to come enter into form. And we have our evolutionary choices as these humans, like you said, what do we do in this lifetime, as our soul continues its progression? And those are our choice points. And I think that there is a level of agency there that we get to do. But then there's also this involution of grace, of this infinite love and compassion that is informing down into form at the same time. And that's where I think that there's a potential inside each of us to actually unwind whatever levels of karma, wound, intense energy has been wound up in this form, that we get the opportunity to actually allow it to move, allow this to move us. And so I love that of like how we evolve through these chakric realms, and I don't think our work is done when I leave this body. That's I can certainly say that.
Yeah, that was a big. Before I studying metaphysics and the teachings of the Aetherius Society, it was a big shock to me. Before I kind of thought, you raise Kundalini all the way, you get Nirvana, enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, ascension. Bingo, baby, game over. Back to the source. I'm light. But we've learned from the Nine Freedoms, which Dr. King channeled, that afterwards you go to interplanetary existence, so you exist on other planets in our solar system at a higher frequency and a much, you're a body, you're to us you'd be a light being, but eventually, you Saturnian existence, then you can live on the sun, and then after that you incarnate into greater and greater beings, planets, suns, you become the logos of the planets, consciousness amalgamates back to God. And it's a long journey, it's millions of lives. So yeah, it's to have that understanding really makes me maybe more patient or more frustrated. I don't know, depending on the day. Yeah. And we also see that we came from Maldek before, which is now the asteroid belt, and we destroyed that through the probing the atom, and it just killed the logos of a planet, which is you can't imagine doing a worse thing. So we're very karmically involved, and we came to the Mother Earth, and we had to have these bodies formed for us 18 million years ago by the Senate Kumar, who they established Shambhala on the etheric plains above the Gobi Desert as a base for him, and his team created these bodies for us. So they obviously knew that their blueprint probably was human design, and Gene Keys was a part of it. So we do have a creator in that respect. There's God, but there's all these creators below, because maybe the Senate Kumar was also learning how to design a civilization, how to create beings, and how to so these downloads that people like Richard get are information from our creator, maybe not the creator, but it's probably in the Akashic records. No, I mean must all be there, and that's just light. So everything's light. We're solidified sunlight. So
Yeah, a lot of Richard Steeper prophecy work, especially if you ever open the book to Jinky 55 or Jinky 22, they're these master keys of evolution and involution. And in it, even in the 22, he speaks similar to these 9 initiations that you were the planetary body. There's a similar cadence in some of what his work kind of unwinds these different initiations that the soul is going through, as well as in the 55, this prophecy of our evolution as Homo sanctus has a whole new level of being that is interwoven with some of this intelligence that we've been receiving at different iterations of reincarnation cycles and collective consciousness growth. But how does it actually mutate the body and grow into a whole new being that can integrate more of that wisdom inside this physical vessel? And the sacred human is a part of the prophecy of these the transformation of the dragonfly is why that's an important symbol inside the Gene Keys, is that revelation of these 99% of our life lived in the water of the muck, and then the light that hits our skin and awakens a completely new being. So I think there's a lot of resonance there too. I would say probably sipping of the same cosmic wisdom and maybe interpreting it slightly different depending on the poetic brains, but and the different ways we've attained, that these teachers attained that wisdom.
yeah, yours is definitely the poetic path. Yes, the Aetherius is very scientific. Yeah, I mean, Master 6 talks in a very, he talks about the faces of each chakra, and it's very metaphysical and very, it's turns of the wheel and there's numbers and
Yeah.
yeah, you should check it out. It's very marrying all these advanced sciences like you're doing is you could probably get you enlightened just by reading all these different things. But although practice is very important, of course, as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, okay, if people want to take this further, I hope they're inspired to check out Gene Keys. I mean, it's inspired me to go back and listen again to my numbers. What should they do? Should they pick up the book like you did, or?
Yeah, I think if you go to jinkies.com, you can get your free profile just so you have your chart with your numbers. And there is a new to the Jinkies course there, so it can kind of walk you step by step, just very free, brief, but involved of an experience to go on a day of purpose, go on a day of love, go on a day of prosperity, and drink these keys in. But especially to the Aetherius Society, I would highly recommend the book, the Jinkies book, because I think that it touches on so many different metaphysical, it is more in the science and poetry side of it, but it is a code book and even if you don't even look at your profile, these 64 codes tell a whole story like what you're describing of this cosmic curtain that we can take a peek behind and see the genealogical impacts and evolutions of what we as a species have gone through, and perhaps also what we as a species will be headed into. But I highly recommend it as an experiment, even just opening the book and seeing what emerges. But the profile is very helpful to just take one key, read it, listen to it, and then just let it sit inside you for a day, a week, a month, and notice the synchronicities that arise. That's where I feel the Gene Keys really does its work, is in a contemplative practice where you don't hyper focus. You actually with playful curiosity, hold it lightly, and then notice the synchronicities that kind of come into your path.
Yeah, I love listening to Richard's voice on the tapes as well. He's very, yeah, he's an Englishman like me, and
Yeah.
he doesn't talk it doesn't not big words. It's yeah, it's very he's the embodiment of of this. But he was definitely like Dr. King is the avatar for the Aquarian age, so he's the embodiment of Aquarius. With all his skills, and Richard is definitely the embodiment of Gene Keys. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, and if people want to learn more about the Aetherius Society, then go to aetherius.org, and we'll put links to everything in the show notes. And is there anything else you wanted to add, Elijah?
No, it's just such a pleasure to get to share with you and to feel the communion. So thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing the wisdom. Help us all go further along the path.
Mm.
Thank you.